I recall the celebration of what I remember as Rally Day. And for decades it has been a Sunday on the church's calendar, usually the first part of September, where the local congregation gathers its members and celebrates the start of a new year of activities in the congregation. It's often been referred to as the kickoff Sunday for the program year, which coincides, of course, with the beginning of football season, where the game begins with the proverbial kickoff, but I don't want to talk about football this morning. But I have also always been puzzled as to how a liturgical church like the Lutheran Church would be so endeared by a secular name as Rally Day. The term just doesn't seem to fit the ecclesiastical vocabulary that we often use in describing a particular Sunday when we come to church, like Pentecost Sunday, the third Sunday in Lent, the fourth Sunday after Epiphany. And yet Rally Day has become one of those high holy days on the church's calendar that involves lots of planning, plenty of celebration, enthusiastic and energetic worship and music, a smorgasbord of food to follow, and in recent years, for us here at King of Kings, yes, even a moon bounce. I still don't know the history of how Rally Day became part of the church's life. But I picked up a Webster's dictionary this week, and I looked up the definition of the word rally. And I was pleased with what I read, especially in the context of our worship this morning. Webster defines the word rally, quote, to bring or come together for a common purpose. Now that word may not find itself in ecclesiastical or theological jargon, but it's certainly an appropriate and an applicable word for giving reason and support for our being together this morning. We've come together for the common purpose of giving worship to our God and building a sense of unity in our community. And that focus of unity within our community will be foundational as we begin yet another program year. And that's a good reason to rally. As we rally in coming together for a common purpose, we do so also this morning with an unconditional welcome to everyone who comes through those doors. Most of us who have been actively involved in the ministry here at King of Kings over the past few months will undoubtedly say and feel that there really wasn't much of a summer break, not much downtime for relaxation and recreation. For me, it seems that this summer was one of the busiest that I can recall in recent history in our church. And I have to admit, I was getting a little nervous, as up until a couple of weeks ago, we didn't have a theme for Rally Day. And I was anxious about not having a theme for starting our fall programming and ministry, but during our planning council meeting in August, Jane Hanlon, our chair, asked our team members to share some ideas and thoughts about a theme, and I think it was Charles DeLeon, our welcoming outreach team lead, that suggested the phrase, all are welcome. And unanimous consensus was almost immediately given. Welcome and hospitality are attributes to our Christian faith. But like so many other churchy terms and words, we give a lot of lip service to them. And I wonder, do we really mean what we say? I want you now to do a little exercise. Pick up your worship bowl. Turn to page 1. Bottom of the page, the introduction. Words of welcome that express a hand of welcome to anybody today that may be new or visiting, hear these words. God calls us to be a welcoming people. Welcome to people new to the faith. Christians of every flavor to long-time Lutherans. Welcome to new guests and old friends. Welcome to people of every age and size, color and culture, ability and gift, to gay and straight, to old and young, to believers and questioners. This is a place where we live past the labels, where we come to celebrate, grieve, rejoice, and recover. Here, all are welcome. I humbly and honestly can stand before you this morning and unquestionably say that during my many years of ministry here at King of Kings, we have truly, intentionally been a welcoming faith family, and we have tried to practice those words. Now, with all of that being said, there may be some among us this morning, both members and visitors, who may be thinking, well, that's great, Pastor Mike. I love your theme. I love the children's message. But we just heard a very unwelcoming story from the gospel reading. I seriously thought about not using the appointed lectionary text for this Rally Day Sunday and find what I thought would be a more appropriate text of welcome. But the more I studied the story that I just shared with you, the more my eyes were open to the reality that this text does speak to our theme of all are welcome. Let me share why, a little bit of background. As we read the introduction to Mark's gospel today, Jesus has just, as it says in the very beginning, fled to a town called Tyre, T-Y-R-E, for a little R&R. And Lord knows, and I say that literally and figuratively, that Jesus was now looking for some downtime after a very, very exhaustive time of ministry. So I can imagine from Jesus' human nature how incredibly frustrating, even disappointing it was for him to discover that his fame in this little beach town of Tyre had spread, and his vacation was now spoiled by yet one more person asking for a little bit of his time, a favor. A woman comes requesting some help for her little girl, who in today's understanding may have been fighting some kind of mental disorder. And then there's this weird exchange of words here. Again, what Mark says. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Jesus said to her, let the children be fed first, for it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. But she answered him, sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. What's going on there? Jesus seems to come off as downright rude, if not worse. Really, did he have to call her a dog? I mean, goodness, which one of us, if our children were seriously ill, being desperate for any kind of help, and we suddenly heard that there was a miracle worker coming from someplace else to our neighborhood, wouldn't we seek out desperation to find that person and ask for a favor? So this woman does what any desperate parent would do when she hears that such a person is in the neighborhood. She runs. She prostrates herself in an act of respect, if not downright worship. And then the gospel says she begs fervently for the restoration and the healing of her little girl. And in return, all she gets is not just a rebuke, but it seems like an insult. Actually, I think a mean, ugly slur, you dog. Now, different commentators and preachers have often offered their more compassionate explanation of this story. If you look to the Greek, the word in Greek that's used here for dog could be interpreted puppy. Maybe you could say that Jesus was trying to be a little bit more affectionate and intimate, like, sorry, little puppy, but it's not your time yet. But personally, whether we interpret it as a puppy or dog, I still think it's pretty obnoxious to call a desperate mom seeking for help for a little daughter a dog. Other commentators will say that this story is all about a kind of test, sort of like a Job story. How far is this woman willing to go in keeping her faith? I don't buy that one either, because why does this desperate woman who's already demonstrated her great faith by coming to Jesus alone, bowing at his feet, begging him for healing, why does she need to be tested, let alone in such a very demeaning way? Well, as one seeks to understand the scriptures, of course, it's always important to put it in the broader context. Mark's gospel, in contrast to John's gospel that we've been hearing from for a number of weeks, Mark's gospel pictures Jesus throughout the gospel as one who's developing his identity as the Messiah, not already seen, signed, sealed, and delivered, as John says. And so maybe in this story, this desperate mom pushes Jesus, stretches his visions of God's grace, makes clear to him that in an unexpected and initially unwelcome way, that there's room in God's kingdom for everyone. Jew and Gentile, male and female, slave and free, insider, outsider, even dogs, like her and her daughter. So in looking over this, what I thought to be as an initially inconsiderate and inappropriate text, I'm finding myself giving thanks to God for this desperate mom and her fierce parental love. For in it we see clearly as anywhere in the gospel the character of God's tenacious commitment and God's similarly fierce love for all of God's children. The gospel this morning makes us aware of the unexpected blessings and the insight, especially for those of us who've been part of this community for a long time. They make us aware of what a stranger might bring to us. Most of our churches are, when you get right down to it, are pretty homogeneous. And while that's perhaps understandable, it can also be limiting as we think to bring, sometimes when we gather together, we are on the same page, we're the same perspective, we have the same experiences, we hold the same common assumptions about God, the world, our faith. And so we just sort of stroke each other's back because we're all together, and sometimes we think all together. But every once in a while, someone who is totally different from us might come through those doors for a worship service or for a particular activity. And then the question becomes, how are we going to welcome him or her? Will strangers who come through those doors feel welcome? Or perhaps feel strange? Will they sense people eager to make a place for them in this place? Or feel the need, oh, I've come to this church, I guess I'm going to have to fit in and conform to the way things are done around here. As we kick off the new year, and we look to the future with some changes in the forecast, but never with question as to who's leading the way, what kind of welcome mat do we have in place? To say and then to mean that all are welcome really does ratchet things up a bit. Let's face it, hospitality and welcome for most of us It means just being patient and polite while we wait for the newcomers to become more like us. But can we understand such welcome and hospitality as a willingness to be open to distinct gifts and perspectives of someone who may be different than us? Can we even imagine that welcome and hospitality is an openness of receiving people who are different from us as gifts of God, given to change and to stretch us in our way of thinking? You know, when I combine today's gospel story and its meaning, as well as the words that Susan read from James, and with the words that you find on the front of your worship folder, we're weaving this year a welcome mat that makes it unconditionally clear that all are welcome in this place. And so I conclude with those words that you see on the front of your worship folder. Look at them, if you will, with me. Those words that say, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. For by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. Yes, my friends, there are indeed strangers and angels among us. Will we recognize them? And will we welcome them? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please rise as we join in song. All are welcome.